This episode of Point of View Uncensored is sponsored by Juicy Details, here located on the southeast side of Atlanta. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for another edition of Point of View Uncensored. Again, I'm Dr. Renaissance, and today we have with us today a gentleman I met that's running for Georgia Secretary of State. His name is Dr. John Eaves. I'm glad to have you with us today. How you doing today, sir?
Great, Dr. Renaissance. Good to see you again. Thank you for the invite. Looking forward to having a very informative conversation with you and your listening audience.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming on with us. So, as we all know, Tuesday, we are having our primary election. I know a lot of people have been voting. I was in line on Friday. I went actually right before 6 o'clock, and it was a long line outside. So I was like, wow. So people are really energized about this voting. So, but how did it change, like particularly between like now and then the 2020 election, as far as the voting?
Yeah. So, Dr. Renaissance, like you, I voted on Friday as well. I went to the C.T. Martin Recreation Center in Northwest Atlanta, and I voted around 2 o'clock and waited for about an hour. And so there have been changes in voting laws in Georgia. Most of it deals with absentee voting, and for this election in 2022. So let me back up. The law was passed in 2020 that dealt with a variety of things, especially again the absentee ballot process. So what has the impact been? Is so far it's been relatively minimum. The turnout for voting in the Democratic primary, as well as the primary in general, has hit record numbers, and we expect a lot of people to vote on Tuesday. And so a lot of people, about 90% of the Democrats are voting in person. So very few people are voting absentee now. And so that's been probably the biggest impact, is people find the absentee balloting process cumbersome and a little bit unreliable. So they want to be in person, and that's okay. They touch the screen and they have 99% confidence it's going to count. And so I'm very happy for those who voted in early voting, and those who haven't, go out and vote on Tuesday, and be a part of your civic responsibility to vote and be a part of an active member of our society.
Good. Well, thank you for that. My next question is: I see that you are running for Georgia Secretary of State, and what do you feel like if you are elected? What would you be doing differently than the current Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger?
Yeah, so Secretary of State is one of the most important positions in Georgia among the people who are elected statewide. You have governor, you have attorney general, you have lieutenant governor, you have agriculture commissioner, labor commissioner, insurance commissioner. Well, of all of those positions, second only to the governor's race or governor's position, I think that this is the most important, because it's responsible for elections. It's responsible for the voter rolls. So when you register to vote, there are 8 million people in Georgia who are registered to vote. And if you don't vote within a certain period of time, or if you move out of the state, you can be dropped from the registration rolls. And so the Secretary of State's office manages the database of voters in Georgia. Then there's this corporations division. Many folks in your listening audience are small business owners. You have to pay your registration fees every year to remain an active legal business in Georgia. Well, the Secretary of State's office manages that. Then there's licensing, and then there's the securities division, and there's charities, and then there's also, believe it or not, cemeteries fall under the Secretary of State's office. So what would I do differently? I certainly will make voting easier. I'll be a champion of all Georgians who want to vote. Make sure that every Georgian who is registered to vote and wants to vote, I want to make sure that their vote is protected and counted. I want to make sure that as many people who are eligible to vote will actually get registered to vote. These are college students who sometimes fall through the cracks. Ex-felons, people who come from the criminal justice system. Some of them lose their voting rights and are not encouraged to register and get those rights restored. I'm going to be the champion of ex-offenders. So I want to get more people involved in voting, because I think the more people who vote, the more active our society is, and how more people can be feeling invested in society by voting. But the other part about this position that I'm going to be that's going to be different from this current Secretary of State is I'll put a lot of effort on supporting small businesses. And Dr. Renaissance, later in the conversation, I can go into a lot more details, but a lot of Black folks have a business. Some of them call it a side hustle. I want people to view this as a business, and how you can have supplemental income, or that can be your primary income and you can be your own boss. And I want to talk later on about how the Secretary of State's office can support that.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Now, one thing that always kind of troubled me was, I don't know, I guess maybe only doing the primaries where they ask you if you're a Republican or Democrat, or if you are or not non-affiliated, but then you can't vote for those candidates if they're running for Democratic or Republican. Can you explain, like, how is that possible? Like, why is it that we have to claim or declare a certain party in order to vote for certain people?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So Georgia is a state where the two parties are recognized, and people do have to choose. If you're registered as a Democrat, you have to register as a Democrat, where you check in, and you get a ballot only with people who are running as Democrats for all of the offices on the ballot. And as you noticed, Dr. Renaissance, it was a long list of people running for various offices, statewide offices, county offices, state representatives, state senators, perhaps a congressman or woman, as well as a senator and governor. So there were quite a bit of people running for office. And so you have the Democrats, and then you have the Republicans, and only Democrats vote for other Democrats who are running for office, and the same thing happens with Republicans. It's almost like a tournament where the NCAA, and then ultimately you have the Final Four. So the Republicans and the Democrats all kind of duke it out with each other through the elections process. There may be a runoff, and then ultimately there will be a winner in each office that's being sought. And then the winner of the Democrats goes head to head with the winner of the Republicans. And that's done in what's called the general election. So right now we're in the primary, which is the early stages of the whole process. Democrats and Democrats go against each other. Then if nobody in a particular race gets more than 50%, then there's a runoff. The two top people in a specific race go head to head. Then the winner of the runoff goes on to the general election in November. So the long response to your question is you do have to choose. You can't go back and forth. Now, in the general election, you just vote for Democrat or Republican. Most people still vote straight down the line, but every now and then there's somebody who votes kind of back and forth. They vote for the person versus the party.
Okay, so pretty much you only pretty much declare a party only during the primaries and not during the general election.
Right. So in the primary, you declare your party designation, or you declare the primary that you're going to vote in, Democrat or Republican. And then when it comes to the general election, you just get one single ballot, and everybody's name is on the ballot. It'll be a Democrat and a Republican on the ballot for each race, and you just choose who you want to vote for at that time.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so now I'm looking at the list of candidates that you're up against. I know I see a D. Dawkins Hager. I see Floyd Griffin, which I actually met him the other day. And then I see Miss B. I don't want to pronounce her last name incorrectly, but Ginion, and then Michael Owens.
Right.
Now, do they particularly you guys do debates, on these types of elections, or how do we know? How can we be more informed with each candidate that's running for the positions?
Let me tell you, bro. I mean, we've had about 30, maybe even more than that. Various Democratic county committees, whether it's Bibb County or Morgan County or Fulton County, DeKalb County, Cobb County, they've hosted virtual forums. Then there are other civic organizations like Delta Sigma Theta, aka Phi Beta Sigma. They've hosted forums. And then Georgia Public Broadcasting Television actually hosted a debate on television about 3 weeks ago. Unfortunately, even with all of these forums, most voters didn't see any of them. It's not so much because it's not the candidate's fault. I still travel around. You and I met, but the hosts of these forums, sometimes they have a limited audience, and we speak specifically to that group. So like the Delta Sigma Theta hosted, we spoke to Delta Sigma Theta sorority members, Alpha Phi Alpha, aka Phi Beta Sigma, and then there NAACP, the DeKalb chapter hosted an event. So anyway, we've done about 30 of them. Morehouse College, Spelman College, they also hosted an event. So there were a couple of colleges that did it as well. But again, even with what we've done, there's still a lot of people that didn't get a chance to kind of view all of the candidates. Now, I will just tell you this. Even though you haven't seen us in a debate or forum, I tell you this, I was the best one. Maybe a little biased, but I still think I was the best one.
Well, I know I was talking to Floyd Griffin. He said he has like 30 years of CEO experience. I know he was a representative for a while, and he did a lot of work within I guess the legislature or the Georgia state politics. So I guess my question is, a person like him with those type of experiences, how do you feel that you'll be a better fit for a candidate for this position?
Yeah, so that's a fair question. I will say that Floyd Griffin and Dee Hagler and Michael Owens, those are three of the candidates who I know the best. My opponents, they actually are pretty well qualified. However, I often say, yes, they're qualified, but I'm the one that's most uniquely qualified. So I have been the chairman of Fulton County government. You may or may not live in Fulton County, Dr. Renaissance, but Fulton County is the largest county in the state of Georgia. It's 1 million residents, 15 cities. It's a government that has $1 billion budget, 4,500 employees. Well, hey, I was the man for 11 years. Yes, I worked closely with other commissioners, but I was the chairman of the county government. So none of my opponents that I named have that type of experience. And not only that, we dealt with so many issues that are important to people's lives. Among those was we actually oversaw the election of in Fulton County. So I'm the only one that has experience overseeing elections in a government. And that's what I did when I was chairman of Fulton County. There were roughly 600,000 people in Fulton County who registered to vote. We had a budget of $6 to $9 million. We had 350 precincts around the county. We did some really good things under my watch, souls to the polls, 3 weeks in advance voting. But we weren't perfect. We made some mistakes. But you know what? We learn from mistakes. And so I feel that I'm a better leader as a result of seeing these mistakes and trying to deal with them. So as your next Secretary of State, and I'm going to claim it, I will certainly bring these levels of experiences to the table with me that none of my opponents can bring.
Okay. Good to hear that. One of my last questions I wanted to bring up. 1 second. So what is your take on the other candidates in other elections, like as far as like, the governor's race? Even with Senator Warnock, he's running up for re-election. Also Nikema Williams for a representative. Um, and even Lucy McBath. Now that was the most interesting of them all because I'm still kind of unsure how she's doing her election. I mean, is she's going to a different district or what's going to happen? Because it seems like they're trying to take her position, and with all this stuff that's going on, like what are we to do at this point?
Yeah. So I teach at Spelman College and I teach political science. So let me just give a 30-second political science lesson here. So every 10 years, the legislature in states, they, based on census data, they redraw districts. So I may have a district that was drawn in 2010, but in 2020, because of population growth, you can redraw the district, and the state legislature does it. So the state has the power to redraw districts. Unfortunately, when the districts are redrawn, if people who live in the district, particularly if they're black and brown or so-called minorities, and their power is diluted, it's called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering, gerrymandering. And that's what's happened here in Georgia. So Lucy McBath was the congresswoman in District 6 in North Fulton and part of East Cobb. The Georgia legislature redrew the district and basically made it more Republican than Democrat. So Lucy McBath knew that she was going to lose if she sought re-election because it was redrawn with more Republicans than Democrats. She decided to go to the district next door, which is District 7, Gwinnett County, and run for Congress in that district. And so you have two congresswomen, both Democrats, who are going head to head because of redistricting that took place, and that forced Lucy McBath to leave her current district and go next door to District 7. So that's an answer to part of your question. But there are other competitive races. Stacey Abrams is running unopposed. There's no other person running for governor. Raphael Warnock is being challenged by another Democrat. Her name is, I think, Tamar Johnson. Obviously, Raphael Warnock is the incumbent and has the advantage. You have Nikema Williams is running for Congresswoman in District 5, which is most of Atlanta. She's being challenged by a challenger as well. Stovall, I forgot her first name, I think it's Valencia Stovall. And then you have other competitive races on the county level, on the state level, in terms of state representatives and as well as senators. You have county commissioners who are running. You have judges who are running. So there are quite a few races, and then each race has, at least two people, and in some cases as many as 9 people running for that office. So it's a lot of people running for office in 2022.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you. Is there any lasting remarks you would like to say as far as this primary and even this election cycle that we're about to embark on?
Very important. Very important. So I'm assuming, Dr. Renaissance, that your viewership is relatively young. I'm gonna be very direct with your audience. They're not showing up. So in Georgia, roughly 300,000 Democrats have voted in early voting. Roughly 3,000, slightly less than that, but roughly 300,000. 80% of them are 50 years and older. 80%. 20% are 40 and younger. So a disproportionate number of young people are voting. A low percentage of young people are voting. Young people who want society to be better, see things that are wrong in a variety of areas, don't complain if you don't vote. So my challenge to your listening audience is go out and vote on election day and make your voice heard. Everybody's vote counts. Even if your one vote is a part of hundreds of thousands of other voters, it still counts. When I ran for chairman of Fulton County in 2010, this is the last point I want to make. I won 3 times. And one of the times I ran, I only won by 303 votes. And so if 304 of those people had said, I'm not going to vote today, I would have lost. And so it's important for everybody to vote, participate in the democratic process. Your vote is your sacred right, and it is a way for you to be heard. So, Dr. Renaissance, hey, I appreciate it. And I really ask those who are part of this call, part of this discussion, if you've been impressed or you've been inspired by what I've shared today, if you learned anything from what I've shared today, please vote for me, John Eaves, your next Secretary of State of Georgia.
And there we have it. Thank you again for joining us, Dr. John Eaves. That about wraps up our edition of Point of View Uncensored. Again, as he has stated, please get out and vote. Tuesday, May 24th. Polls open at 7 a.m. here in Georgia, and they close at 7 p.m. You have to go to your polling place because early voting has ended. I want to end you off with a word of the day. Persevere. Persevere meaning to continue in course of action, even in the face of difficulty, with little or no prospect of success. So let's persevere on as we continue on with this election and continue on living our lives. Be blessed, everyone.